Hello and welcome to another Pursue Network online video. I'm here today having a chat with a good friend, Ben Moore, about worship and about his life and about what he's up to at the moment. And hopefully today you'll learn a few bits and pieces that will help you on your own journeys in those areas. So over to you, Ben. Who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm Ben. I'm 24. I'm a user experience designer, which means I design websites and apps and overall experiences for people um, based on user research, which is really important. Um, I am a creative kind of guy. I like to record music. I like to do active things like surfing and snowboarding and all that kind of stuff. And I am a worship leader. I started off as an electric guitarist, but God called me in 2018 to start pursuing worship leading as well. And I was very hesitant in that. I did not want to. I did not sing at all and tried to not sing whenever I could. Um, but God kept telling me, I want you to step out in faith and do some worship leading with like acoustic guitar and singing. So here I am today. Literally came just now from preparing some worship sets for the weekend. So there you go.
Fantastic. So what songs are you doing this weekend?
That's a good question. This weekend I am doing, looking at the WhatsApp chat, Our God He Reigns, which is an old one
Okay.
from New Day. Very good though. Promises, Thanksgiving, Praise, Solid Ground, which is another New Day one,
Yeah.
and How Great Is Our God.
Amazing, amazing. The moment you said "Our God, He reigns" in my head, it was "Our God, He reigns" straight away in my head. I thought you got to sing that title. You can't even say the name of the song. You mentioned New Day a couple of times there. I believe you're at a New Frontiers church at the moment.
Yes, I am indeed. Not that it means that much to me because I just grew up in a non-denominational church, so I don't go around being like, "Oh, this is that and this is that." I'm just kind of like, "Oh, you're a Christian too."
Yeah, good, good, good. Is there anything in particular about the worship at that church that drew you towards it?
Is very like family based. And the whole goal of the worship leader there is that we're worshiping together. And you can really tell because they're really free with allowing people coming up to the mic and starting something new or giving a word or anything like that. And I think from like a couple of different experiences of church, that is really refreshing for me. I know that lots of places do that, but it was nice to go back to that. And yeah, that's what really kind of drew me into this church at the moment.
So you mentioned that people are able to freely come up and say things. How does that work in practice?
Um, I mean, free as in they're not just going to barge into the middle of a chorus or something, but let's say they end the song, and then whoever's hosting, so like saying good morning, this is our church, they will kind of nudge the person who might have come to the front, and be like, oh yeah, you can go up to the mic now, and they'll help them set the microphone if they're really short or really tall or something, and then they'll just say what they came to say.
Amazing, amazing. I don't know. I know I've been in several environments where there's been it's almost like gatekeeping. There was someone there to check that what's going to be said is actually legitimate and not sort of taking advantage of the stage in any way. So I think it's really healthy to have that protection in place, but also really good to have the freedom of being able to say what God is saying to a congregation through the congregation, rather than it being all from that stage.
Hmm. Yeah, I think our church went through a time of really gatekeeping and then had to kind of take a step back and say, hold on a minute. What if God wants to say something that we is not it's not our brand or something, then you know. So they took a step back and said, actually, we'll let everyone because Jesus would do that, I think. So
Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. Love that. Love that. You also mentioned at the start that you do some producing
Yeah.
and music mixing. So not just a worship leader, but also producing and mixing music in the background. Now, obviously, I say in the background because often we don't see the producers. They do all the hard work behind the scenes. They make the worship leader sound great on records and releases, but they're not often the one that gets the title name. They're not the person. They're not buying a record because of the producer. We're buying it because of the artist. What's it
Mm.
like being a producer?
What's it like being a producer? Um, it's interesting because you get people coming. I haven't done it for a while now with other people. I've been doing my own stuff at the moment, but being a producer for other people, you get some people who will give you like a guitar and a vocals and say, "This is a rough sketch of what I want a song to be like. Can you make something?" And then you get other people who have done the whole thing, and they just want it to be put together like a, they've given you the bricks and you just have to build the wall. Um, so it's very kind of, if you have your process, then you go through a process of, okay, what do I actually need to do here? What do I need to add? I think God has given me a gift of working out what's missing. Sometimes I'm not the one who has the talent to be able to add that in, so I have to say, "Oh, hey mate, can you record this for me? Because I'm not a drummer, or whatever." But being able to spot the holes in the wall and then finding those bricks to put in is, I think, one of the big skills for doing producing. Um, and it's really fun because you start off with something and then finish with something sometimes completely different, which is exciting.
I know I sent you a track a while back and said, "Hey, can you come up with some electric guitars for this?" And it was really simple. And instead of coming up with electric guitars, you came up with an entire track, all produced and beautifully done, and with a completely different feel to it. You had heard something in the song and heard something in the music and brought that out and brought it to life, which was really impressive. When you so you're like hearing what's not there in the song.
And
Essentially,
sometimes
you're
hearing
hearing
stuff
those.
that
Yeah.
I want to take away as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my vocals or my guitar playing, or just get rid of all of that. In fact, get rid of the lyrics and the melody. Let's have a different song.
A lot of the well, funnily you say take away the guitar. A lot of the time it's the acoustic guitar because you start off with that, and then when you add in the drums and the bass and everything, the acoustic guitar is very busy now because you're strumming like jigga 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 jing, and everyone else might be in the second verse especially. It's always the second verse. You get like everyone's warmed up to the song, we've gone through a chorus, and now you're like, oh, we need to break it down, get a nice groove going, but the acoustic guitar is still going. So if you ever want to hear the groove more, take off the acoustic.
Yeah. It is funny because in a church setting, you sort of see the guitar player as the main sound. Even if you can't hear them very well, because you can see them visually, you're imagining you can hear them. And
Yeah.
then when you hear the album and the release, it's always the one instrument you really, really can't hear.
Mm,
So yeah, it's interesting to see
it
that.
is funny.
How do you
Yeah.
make sure that all the instruments can be heard clearly in a mix?
So there's a few different ways you can do. You can either do the like most basic one is usually if you're recording it into a program like Logic Pro or something like that, and you've got these sound adjustment knobs on the left, these faders, and you can literally just get the green lines that come when something plays, um, get them to be equal. If you're not very good at hearing or something like that, you can do it visually, and if it's not too loud, if it's not going into the orange, then you should then be able to at least hear everything, which doesn't in turn mean that it sounds good, but you'll be able to hear everything. Um, Other ways that the way that I like to do it the most is there's a thing called a direction mixer, and panning and all the lovely different kinds of ways you can do panning. But I like the one that comes with Logic Pro because you just say you have a circle, you say where on the circle you want your instrument to appear, and then it uses your stereo headphones or stereo signal, to maybe put the left one up or the right one down or whatever, and it moves it around your head. So I like to kind of put someone, especially if you're doing it for a video. So the thing that we used to do with the worship videos I would look at the video and see, okay, there's a drummer here, the keyboard here, and the guitarist here, or something like that, and you can use that panning and the direction mixer to put them there. But that also uses different parts of your headphones and stuff as well, which means, or speakers or whatever, and it just means that you're not getting so much clashing of all the sounds, and that puts them in their place there, and you can hear it much nicer. Sometimes I don't like that, so if I'm doing my own music, often there's quite, there's a lot of guitars in there because I'm a guitarist, so I'll put one here, one here, one here, one here, and then the main one right in the middle, because I want that tone to be heard, and if you take half away or whatever, put it on this side, you can't hear it. So sometimes you want to keep it like that, especially with bass as well. Otherwise, you've got half your signal full of bass, and then the other one's like, oh, what's so empty. Why?
That makes sense. I like that. I like that. You mentioned the videos you were doing during lockdown. We were producing. I keep hitting the wire of my headphones. I get over enthusiastic, so apologies if the camera judders at any point. During lockdown, we were producing videos for an international network of home churches called Upstream Ministries. We have stopped doing that now, but it was great fun to gather together to try and record as a team worship that could be used, that wasn't just structured songs, but was a complete worship set that then went out across the world. I think most of those videos are still available on YouTube, so you can search and see the sound quality changing as well. The early ones were particularly poor quality, and as we learnt more and more, and as we involved Ben and various other people, the sound quality definitely got better and better and better until we had the last few videos we did. I thought we'd finally found it, finally nailed it, and got it sorted. But nailing that sound so difficult, isn't it? To get that right sound, to work out what you've got to do and how many things need to be tweaked, especially when you're recording live worship and then trying to put it online. I'm aware of several churches in the Southwest which are still streaming online and trying to make sure their online stream sounds good. But on Sundays, often it's the last thing you check on. It's the thing you ignore because it's been set up as opposed to it's being set up each week and double checked. Do you have any top tips for people who are still streaming services online to ensure that their online mix sounds reasonably good?
I would say my first top tip is don't be afraid to first back up your stuff, back up your mix if you can, put it on a memory stick, and then start from scratch again. Because a lot of the time, even with mixes when I'm doing it on digitally, not on a desk or anything like that, I'll add a little thing here or a little thing there, and then change something else on a different instrument, and then you just keep adding and adding and adding, and you end up getting something that's really is not. You're putting a sound out that's not what your instruments or your singers are giving you, and sometimes that's good because you can take away something that's a bit, bad for the overall sound. But a lot of the time, you end up with something that's quite thin sounding, or it won't. And in that, it causes people to not be able to engage so much online because you've got something that's maybe quite piercing to the ears, or they can't properly just relax into it and start worshiping because their mental, their mind is more in listening to what they can hear rather than worshipping. So I would say the first top tip is don't be afraid to just start from scratch again to make it all sound good and almost like you can hear it in the room. So if you've got a good mix in the room, then try and emulate what it sounds like there, but also make sure you're listening from the stream as well, because what you're hearing in a mixing place and what people are hearing on their phone or their laptop or especially their TV could be completely different, and you can't make everyone happy, but it's good to know what people are actually listening to at the end of the day. And you can do that later on in the week if you've recorded it as well. It doesn't have to be live if you can't do that. Other top tips, I would say.
This is always the fun bit because we don't prepare these sessions. So everything I'm asking is very much on the moment. So here we go.
Um, I would say whatever your taste is, try and make everything equal. Because let's say if it was me mixing on a Sunday, I would always turn up the guitar a little bit more, and you can very clearly hear on a live stream when someone's turned something up a little bit, because it suddenly pops out, and you're like, oh yeah, guitar, or um. So yeah, I think my top tip for that is try and get everything equal, so you've got a nice warm sounding enough bass, but not so that you can hear boom 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 as the bass player hits his bass hard in the chorus or whatever. Um, and you can achieve that with compression as well. Get everything glued together nicely. But at the same time as that, I noticed that quite a lot of live streams also have very, very prominent vocals. And it's important that people know what they're singing and know what they're singing along with, but it can suddenly take over if you just notch it a little bit too high in the mix, and then you've got someone's voice um, really loud coming out of your TV if you're at home or something. Um, so, top tip is don't put them too high, but make sure that they can be heard.
Nice. Love that. Love that. You also mentioned at the start that you are an interface design expert, that you've been working in that field. And as part of that, I know that you design websites, not coding behind the scenes, but you design a website to make it look good. Now, I'm very aware that many worship pastors out there or people in charge of worship are often asked to be the creative person as well and asked to design the website or to come up with something. And there are many, many different designs of website out there for churches. Some look better than others. I'll be honest. I think everyone can appreciate that some websites for churches you look at and think that's just old-fashioned, perhaps, or doesn't reflect the church very well, or might be out of date. You obviously have training in how to make these things look good and how to make them useful and a good resource for the church. So again, do you have any wisdom here that you can share with us on what should be on
Mm,
that website that makes it look good, and what maybe doesn't need to be there? Or over to you.
mm. That's another thing that comes down to your opinion. So, like I was saying about music, I would put guitars heavier. Um, when it comes to designing, there's so many different design elements that are there. Everyone always favors one or the other, or leaves out one all the time. Um, and again, you can't make everyone happy. So someone will still come and say, "Oh, I hate red. Why did you use red?" Um, or something like that. And I think the main thing as a designer is to make sure you're not taking on board stuff like, "Oh, I hate your branding colors," because there's no point in changing that. You Unless you're doing a rebrand, don't change colors because people don't like it. Um, the key thing is to think of yourself as a designer, not an artist, because art is there to look nice, design is there to achieve something, um, and something that's really useful for that is just um, the design principles. I think it's Don Norman's design principles. I would double check that. But design principles. I think it's the 6 design principles. Oop, my keyboard was not connected. Okay, Don Norman's principles of design. I know there's another thing that is like the 6 design principles or something like that. That's a great starting point because that kind of summarizes. That's someone who's really, really clever, summarized what you need to do and the things you need to look out for, which I would do a bad, bad summary of now if I was just to go into it. But look that up. And I think another thing that helps with design, and especially with church websites or events pages and stuff like that, is working out what your users are actually going to do. So this is my whole job really, is what are users coming to do with your thing? Um, are they solving their problem? Are they booking onto an event? Are they just looking and want to know more information? There are so many different things that people can be coming to you for. Um, and the only way you can do that is to talk to them. You might think you know, but you don't. You might be right in your assumptions, but you need to talk to people to validate those problems that are being solved and to work out what the best way of solving that is for them. Um, because yeah, the people that are coming to use your thing are not you who have designed it. You will know where every button is, where every little thing is, where every little hidden feature is, or shortcuts or anything like that. Um, but they don't know any of that when they come. They're probably there for 2 minutes a month or something, you know. So they don't have that built up knowledge of what your thing does. Um, so knowing what they want to do, or what you're offering them as well. There's kind of two things: is what they want to do, what you're offering them, and where's that middle point? How can you solve their problems better, and how can you also help them to help you and stuff like that. And often, well, what I like to think of with that is often you're not gonna then get something that's super complicated looking. You're not gonna get something that is, well, hopefully you get something that's flashy, but it should come across as, oh, this is pleasant and this is nice. This did what I needed it to do, but how did it do that? I don't know. That's incredible. Um, and there's another kind of idea called zero UI, which doesn't mean, or UI stands for user interface, which is basically the appearance of a website, or it's what you're seeing. It's not the back end, which is doing stuff or sending information off, receiving information, but it's what you're seeing. So it's the design, um, and the pictures and all of that kind of stuff. Um, there's an idea called zero UI, which doesn't mean that there's nothing to see, but it means you're literally seeing just what you need to achieve that problem, or to achieve that solution to a problem. um, and it means that you get something maybe a bit like an Apple store, where you walk in and you can see the products, and that's it. You can talk to someone and you can see a product. um, they haven't bothered to have, I mean, they do have adverts there and they're very sleek looking, but you don't have like loads of information right there all over the place, and you don't have loads of stands of, oh, you could buy this t-shirt or this thing or this thing or this thing, but they have, we sell a phone and a watch and a laptop. Do you want that?
Mm.
Effectively. So if you're thinking, what's an example? Um, we're having a worship event on the 22nd of December. Um, you don't then need anything other than worship event at this place on the 22nd of December at this time. Make sure everyone's got the information, but don't then say, and you can contact this person to do this, and there's this team doing this, and you can also drink coffee. That people know you can drink coffee at church. Um, uh, keeping it as simple as possible, and that is a process in itself. Trying to refine it, getting it to that point, will take time, multiple people's inputs to get there. And by people, probably the best is the users. So you can go back to the people that have told you, I have a problem with this, um, to see, have I solved your problem? And if not, why? Like, why is it still kind of hard for you to get the information you need? And then you can make changes in that way. That, in a nutshell, is what I do. Um,
Nice.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit like the old elderly auntie test. It shouldn't look like your elderly auntie made it, with all the information and all the graphics and all the gifs and everything else filling the page with stuff. But similarly, your elderly auntie should be able to find what they want really quickly on it.
Mm. Yeah.
Not created by, but usable by. Yeah, the whole less
Mm.
is more principle, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, looking at how much time we've got left, I wanted to make sure we touch on worship itself. Now, I know you have a big passion for worship and a big passion for extended worship, for not just singing the song, but singing beyond the song and ensuring that what we sing is biblical, theologically sound, and solid musically as well. Let's start with that. How I know that for you there are certain songs that you won't sing, for example, because there are things in them that you disagree with, perhaps, or whatever. How do you go about testing a song to see if it's one that is going to be worth using with your congregation?
Mm. So there's been, for me, different iterations of how I test it. Um, Obviously, starting out, it was ask someone else because I don't know. Um, then we studied theology for, I did a year, you did a couple of years. Um, you learn a lot from just reading other people's books about stuff. Um, and then that kind of builds up your, oh, okay, if people are talking about this or they mention this word, that's not good, or that's what someone else believes. And I don't want to be singing all about that. Um, for instance, there's a song that I really love, but they say one word that then kind of ruins it a little bit for me. So I still sing the song, but I'll just change that word. So it's in the song "Do It Again." They say at the kind of end bit, um, "You've never failed me yet," and that gets me thinking, oh, so when is God gonna fail me? Hmm.
Mm.
And people aren't sat there thinking, um, oh no, when's God gonna fail me? They're not. They're not saying that, but also that's not adding anything to worship. That's not worshiping God. So if I say that last syllable, I'll say, yeah, you've never failed me. Yeah. Or just won't say it. You've
Yeah.
never failed me. Um, so when I was studying theology, I would test everything very thoroughly. Like, oh, what does this mean? Is there things to back this up? And now I've kind of relaxed because I've spoken to lots of people about it and critiqued people, and they've been like, well, you know, think about also coming from a user experience perspective.
Mm.
What are people actually doing when they're singing a song? It's not necessarily breaking down the history of the word yet or something. um, but they're singing to God. They're connecting with God. So I don't want to rule out songs because someone might think this, when the rest of the song is helping someone to express their love for God, or to you know pray in some sort of way. So the way I test now is to go through the lyrics. I need to see the lyrics. I can't just sing what I've heard because, my mind is very visual. I need to see it and be like, oh, well, okay, what does all this mean? Where is this coming from? Like, is this from a Bible verse or a common bit of theology that people have built up over the years, or um, something like that? Where's it coming from? And is that something that people need to sing on a Sunday? If it's a Sunday morning worship, is it something that people who might not be so far along their Christian walk, are they going to be like, oh yeah, this has helped me to connect with God, or this is teaching me theology in some sort of way? Um, or is it just a nice sound? So, like, I remember a few years back there was a bunch of kids songs and a bunch of worship songs that were like, oh, this sounds really nice. This is really great. And then when you look into it, I don't have any examples, but you look into it and you're like, well, I'm kind of just saying nice words, nothing is enriching my walk with God. So I don't. I'm not going to encourage people on a Sunday to sing that. Therefore, kind of leave that out. Like, even if it's the popular song of that week or that half of the year, you don't need to go along with it just because people sing it. And doing something like that is a good way of testing it, just knowing what the words are meaning and where they came from. Another thing is just being very prayerful um, in your preparation, because God will talk to you. God will kind of, nudge your thoughts in a certain way, um, and most likely he's also nudging the thoughts of the person who's preaching that week, or the person who will come up to the microphone and contribute to the worship time through their words. So just being in tune with God is the best way of testing something, because he's going to tell you what to do, if you're asking. Um, so that's what I do at the moment. So yeah, this morning, I was just um, going through some songs, and put my playlist, my usual worship playlist on. Heard a really nice version of something I had no idea I'd heard that before, but just strumming along, playing along. Some of them really struggling to hit those high notes that they'd recorded on the album, but keeping going anyway. And then, in this heart that I'm feeling now, I've asked God, can you come and help me sort something out? So, what would you like to do this weekend or next week or whatever? And through just worshipping God myself, he will open up avenues which then later on in hindsight I'll be thinking, what, there's a real big, like, strong strand of relation to all these songs, or there's something that God is saying through this, and that is the best way of testing it, is just using God to test it, rather than your mental stress. I think.
Love that.
Yes.
Love that. I know Matt Redman, a quote from him that says something like, the amount you worship in private has to outweigh the amount you worship in the public. And so that idea of you worshipping through the songs, finding those moments as you worship where God might move in this moment, or there was some sort of flow. Actually, I wasn't even thinking of going there next, but as I worshipped God, I felt led to go there. And that means on Sunday, this could be a moment where God does something even more with a whole congregation. That idea of letting go and making sure God is your focus in your rehearsing and in your preparation as you worship him. Love that. Love that.
I think also,
so how do you... Sorry.
When it comes to you're doing the thing, you're prepared for the thing, you feel that God is saying something to you, you're going to do the thing. You have this plan, but you can't be like, I have a plan, here it is, yes. But
that's exactly the question I was about to ask.
I have a plan. God, if you need to move it around a bit, then come and move it. You can't be like, hey, it's my plan, I did this. But instead, God did it anyway because you asked him. So hold it lightly and let God change it. So he might be like, I'll take these 3 songs and I'll put these 5 in instead. Or, this person has said something, you need to respond and let everyone else respond in a certain way. And it's not about then getting that new thing perfect. It's about going for it and letting God move through it. And there's often a moment where you get to decide that. And if you're there like, oh no, I should probably change it from A to C, and 64 BPM. Can you start a pad and can you? Oh, okay, then God's kind of like, yeah, you missed it. Well, he's not going to say you missed it, but you can move on to that other song that you prepared for then. Okay. But instead just do it in A,
Yeah.
without a click, and let everyone else and God carry it and go forward and move in God's presence rather than your view of perfection.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm reminded of a time I was mentoring a worship leader, and they went to lead, got to a certain moment, and felt, and it was obvious in the room, from my point of view, that God was doing something. And they paused and went, "Yes, God is doing something in the room. Let's just stop the music for a second and listen and see what that thing is." And I thought, okay, that's the moment you've made a mistake, because yes, we should stop. I love that you've stopped and listened, but actually, what God was doing was building and building a crescendo of energy in the room, and the wave was about to crash, and we were about to explode into something new. And by stopping, I love the fact you recognized that God was involved, that God was doing something, but you misread the situation. And that comes with experience. And sometimes you have to step out and go, I think God's doing something, not sure what to do here. And after a few times, you'll start learning. You'll recognize God's voice more and more clearly. If you ignore it completely, you're in trouble. Keeping yourself open and aware for what God might be saying at any moment, I think, is really key for any worship leader. Yeah.
You never know.
Well,
God might say to stop.
Yes, that could be the message. Sometimes that is the right thing to do. You know that I've led several times, and the worship has faded out at the end to nothingness, and we just all stood there going, "Actually, we don't want to move on. We're just in this place of being still." And it's always a little bit awkward if someone then rushes up to the stage and goes, "Right, well done for that, well done for that," and I'm thinking, "No, we were in the moment. We were there in that place." Remembering that stillness is also okay is fine, but yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, our time, unfortunately, is up. We need to move on. I know we could probably talk for another 10 or more videos on this sort of stuff. I know we get on quite well. And I know you are filled with wisdom on a theological, worship, design, production, all sorts of things you could share on. But for today, that's it. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. And for anyone watching at home, thank you so much. This has been the Pursue Network online, and we can't wait for you to join us again in the future. Do check out our website, pursuenetwork.org, for any information about what we do. We serve the community in Devon and Cornwall in worship. If you're from outside the area, of course, you're welcome to watch these videos and engage with some of the resources that we produced. Till next time, see you again.